Welcome to the number one Bengals podcast. I'm Dadio
Yeah.
McDuke. I'm joined as always by Dr. Hodgie the Electric Ismoji and
Hello.
our special analyst, John Sheeran. So, guys, I know you can't
He's a
see my
he's a
face right now.
manalist.
Yeah, you look a little different today.
Yes. Well, I'm traveling, so I don't have my
Right.
suit with me. Yeah.
Traveling is, I mean, in COVID, obviously, is reckless, but so it goes. And let's be honest, you're doing it for pure capitalist greed. I mean, come on. You went to the island. You went to Village Island. You're opening McDouth Towers in a pandemic, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because actually labor is a lot cheaper now because there's a lot fewer job opportunities. It just seemed like a great, golden kind of opportunity for me. So, you do what you got to do to keep the show running.
Opening a 4-star hotel that has one fake star, so they call it a 5-star hotel. It's a 4-star hotel, and then they put a little star as decoration, so you think it's a 5-star hotel.
Right.
That's the trick.
Yeah,
And-
it's part of the name is the MacDuke Towers a star hotel, and so then I put exactly. I put the star there. So
And one of the things that people don't know about Village Island is its strict censorship laws, which prohibits
Right.
Dadio from showing his face on TV anywhere in Village Island.
Right.
Or interestingly enough, for us to use any F words on the show, that includes fanny pack, that includes that's going to be probably deleted from the show. That includes
I'm gonna have to do it,
French fries, furries, or any derivation of the F word. It includes frijoles and other F words. So we got to be very careful with words that begin with F. This has to do with a misunderstanding when someone from Village Island heard about the F word and censorship laws and became part of the Village Island Constitution.
Right, and then they
just need to say that once.
Oh yeah, be careful.
Exactly.
Whoop. We just lost $10. We have to pay $10 in fine.
Exactly. Well, the problem was that the man from Village Island, actually, after he heard about the F word, he also saw an episode of Sesame Street that was about the letter F. And so everything he learned from that episode, he included in the censorship laws.
So we really got to be careful.
We're getting way off topic here, because, guys.
Well, let me ask you another question. Why have us do a show at the butt crack of dawn, Dadio? I mean, I roll out of bed at noon. You know that.
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. But again, the internet only works for half an hour a day here. And that is the time that I selected to do the show. So we actually do not have much more time. So if you could please stop derailing the show. Yes, we can continue. Yes. Yeah. So look, guys, there is something really big happened yesterday. I don't know if you heard, but the Cincinnati Bengals, they won a game. The third game in Zach Taylor's career. I mean, this guy's on fire. He's winning games every year now, right? And really, here's the biggest thing. It's not like it was one of those sloppy games where, they kind of, fumbled their way into victory or some weird. No, we saw vast improvements on the offensive line, which is the biggest concern. And I want to talk to John because this is expertise. But in terms of, let's just say, the running game and the passing game, right? I mean, I think, John, you were saying 12 pressures is all they allowed. Joe Burrow was only hit, our precious, lovable, adorable, beautiful Joe Burrow, our quarterback. He was only hit, 4 times, I think. He was sacked 0 times, right? And we're used to him getting hit about 45 times a game, and pressured about 150 times and sacked about 8 or 9 times a game. And to see that improvement so fast, we say, okay, maybe they worked on pass pro, but it was also the running game. Joe Mixon, I saw John Sheeran had an article. He had, was a 0.28 added points per rush or something, right? So Joe Mixon had a great game. The rush blocking was excellent. John, what happened? I know the Jaguars, I know their defensive line is not great, but John, look. Let me just tell you, they against the Titans, Derrick Henry is great. 25 carries, 84 yards. Okay, against the Dolphins, Gaskin, 22 carries, 66 yards.
Wow.
Against the Bengals, Joe Mixon, 25 carries, 151 yards. So if you say their rush defense is terrible, come on, Derrick Henry, man. The Titans, their offensive line is so much better. What happened, John?
If you saw like the 2 biggest runs in this game from Mixon and then Giovanni Bernard, it was bad contained by the Jags defense. That was something that allowed Mixon and Bernard to have those explosive plays. But I think the biggest factor in this in terms of that was Drew Sample and Season Carter at tight end were so much better at sealing their gaps and clearing the way for Mixon on some of those outside runs. Sample had probably his best game as a run blocker. I know he had the dropped interception, but he bounced back tremendously after that. And I think as a unit in general, they looked a lot more cohesive. But it was also the fact that, this Jaguars defensive line has no talent at defensive tackle. They had only Josh Allen at edge rusher that can generate any type of pressure and get off the block. So it was an opportunity for that offensive line in total to just look a lot better and to just prove that they aren't just the piling crap heap that they were in the first 3 weeks. Like, they can at least do the things that they need to do against a unit that they were more talented at, and that's exactly what they did. So they deserve credit for that.
Yeah, and I will add to that, John Sheeran, that I was very impressed. But you're right. I mean, this was a easier scenario for our offensive line to perform in. But what it showed us is this is what the team looks like when the offensive line works. When you have a run game, if the offensive line were to work every game, then you'd be much more competitive every game. And I know I'm stating the obvious here, but it's one thing when Joe Burrow gets hit. What did he get hit? 3+2 times? I can't say 5, obviously, F word. He got hit and he got sacked once, you were saying, John. So that's a big difference from what we've seen in the previous games. But it's not just that. It was the Joe Mixon 6 yards per carry that we were seeing that really, really drove the game, in my opinion. And we could see that every game if the offensive line would get its act together.
Right, and you're not going to be able to play the Jaguars every week. But the main difference here was we weren't seeing as many negative plays from the run blocking, and therefore Mixon was able to get at least to the first level and make guys miss. Like, usually in the bad games, we would see Mixon make a couple guys miss at the line of scrimmage and turn maybe like a negative 2-yard gain to like a 3-yard gain. But this time the line was getting movement at the first level. He was getting to those linebackers and actually making guys miss, getting yards after contact, and turning just decent plays to great plays. That was the difference in what elevated this run game to get an average of 0.22 expected points added per rush, like something that they haven't had success with since that Cleveland game last year, which was the last time that they won before this game. So a great all-around balanced game. It's not going to always happen like that, but this is kind of where the stats of if Joe Mixon rushes the ball like X amount of times, they're so-and-so, and they're just a winning team that way. But if you can run the ball successfully as they do, then there's no reason not to do it, because it just makes the game that much easier.
Right. And, that's the thing. So we saw, here's the thing. They were so much on Joe Burrow's shoulders, and it's all adding up in one interesting way for him to be breaking rookie records. He broke he became the first rookie quarterback in NFL history to throw for 300 plus yards in 3 straight games. But it's not just that. It's that we saw a different kind of Joe Burrow this week. We saw him getting rid of the ball earlier. We saw him playing a lot more, I felt, conservatively, which I think in the long run for his body is going to pay off much better. I mean, the Joe Burrow, the excitement that we saw in the early games where he was taking those risks, it's awesome. Don't get me wrong. It gets my heart pounding. But at the same time, I want this man. I think it was, who was it that said, one of the players this week said that Joe Burrow is going to be the face of the franchise for a long time to come. It was Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates just commented that he's going to be the face of the franchise. Well, he can't be the face of the franchise if the man is hurt, if he starts to develop injuries because of all the drops. I was explaining one last point here. Sorry. I was explaining to Dadio about when I was doing judo, when I lived in Japan for some years. And if you do judo, one thing you learn is you get thrown to the ground a lot. And those throws, they don't have to be hard. Sometimes you just drop to the ground. But what happens is if you keep hitting the ground, you will develop injuries, and they're weird injuries. They're all over your body. The body can. He's a young man, but it will add up. Yeah. So I like the conservative play.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest though. I mean, Joe Burrow, yes, throwing the ball way quicker, all of that kind of stuff. But John, the offensive line, whatever you want to say, the offensive line looked different. It looked different. I don't know. Was the coaching better? Was Alex Redmond? This was a question we had. Was it? I mean, what happened? Let's just talk about right guards.
Well, he said it was the matchup. That's what John said. I think it was the matchup.
Redmond was, Redmond was decent. Like, he didn't destroy any plays aside from, I think, like a bad holding call. But he was just out there and he didn't make too many mistakes. He wasn't like showcasing any great technique in terms of pass protection, and he did allow a couple pressures here and there. I think he allowed one of the hits on Joe Burrow, but it was, I guess, relative to what we saw from Billy Price and Fred Johnson that makes Alex Redmond's game that much better and just that much more needed. Like what Hodgie was saying, where Burrow cannot take, however many hits a game, because one of those hits may lead to just an injury that he may not be able to come back from. Like, those hits are going to happen because of how he plays, because he extends plays, he creates out of structure, and sometimes you're going to get popped by an effort play by the defensive lineman. If he can minimize the amount of unnecessary hits from just terrible pass protection reps from his offensive lineman, that's the key. And what we saw from Redmond was that he just did enough to avoid, what we saw from Price and Johnson in the previous weeks.
Yeah. I gotta say, it's a real.
John, let me ask you something. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, one of the real things that's a mystery for me is the relationship of Jim Turner and the players, because there seems to be players that he likes and there seems to be players he doesn't like. And for some reason, the sweetie pies, like Fred Johnson, he seems not to like. And he made the comment this week about Fred Johnson. We've had Fred Johnson on the show. We know how sweet of a man he is, how kind of a man he is. And yet he seems to have this thing where he loves the heart. He loves Bobby Hart, and I don't get it. Like, he seems to have his preferences. There seems to be some kind of weird culture in the locker room that I don't understand. And I'm wrong.
I would say it's probably weird. Yeah.
No, but John, I mean, in terms of right tackle, what better options do we have right now? Honestly,
they don't have any options. The only other option that they haven't tried. The only other option that they haven't tried is Akeem Adeniji, which is someone that Turner has praised unequivocally throughout this offseason. But at a certain point, like, there's just guys that just aren't ready for that yet.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, I think
he's got potential, right? Or no?
I mean,
John.
Yeah, look, if we want, John. I know John's high on him. Actually, I know Lapham was very high on him. Lapham was very high on him, right?
For a 6th-round pick, I think he can be decent. They were hyping him up as someone who could have went in the 2nd and 3rd round. And if that were the case, then he would have probably gone to the field at this point from what Bobby Hart was doing.
Yeah. But, John, let me just say this. When I watch Joe Burrow throw the football, I know I'm a Bengals fan and all that. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody throw the ball more accurately. Like, that interception, quote unquote, interception, that was a perfectly placed ball. And I was looking at the long incompletion to AJ Green. That was a perfect, you know what happened when that incompletion to AJ Green, the long one, there was a sort of sadness that came into my heart where I was like, AJ Green has been making this play for 11 years or whatever, and he never had someone throw the ball to him so perfectly, and now he doesn't have that burst to get there. It's just a tragedy.
That's so true.
You know what the tragedy is? Yeah. You know what you're describing? It's the two strangers on the train who just miss each other. Because for all these years, he was with the wrong man. He was with Andy Dalton. And then when the right man shows up into town, who's Burrow, he can't, it's too late for him. It's the classic, love story, but in this case, football story.
No, it's Shakespearean,
It's Shakespearean. Yeah.
And I think this was the game where, like, we had 3 weeks of AJ kind of like shaking the rust off, and this was the game because they had a great matchup. Jaguars secondary does not feature a lot of prominent talent. CJ Henderson, the best cornerback, exited the game with an injury, so he had a great opportunity to show that he's still the old AJ, but he just looks like an old AJ. It just looks like if he's not completely done now, he's very close to being done.
And why can't they just use AJ for the shorter passes, keep him up front?
Well, that's what they did in the very first play. They got him like a 3-yard game. When they tried to get vertical with him, he just, like Dadio said, he didn't have the same burst and explosion to create separation. So at this point, when you have guys like Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins that are clicking, have obvious chemistry with Burrow, there's only so much you can do with AJ.
It's just so strange to me. I guess I don't think it's just the age, John, because 32 now is not that old. I saw guys like Tim Brown, Jerry Rice, they long lost the burst, years before, and they were still putting up 1,000 yards and being effective because of their veteran violence, if you will, right? I mean, they just knew how to kind of shake defenders. So I'm just so confused.
It's foot injuries too.
Yeah,
I mean, that's true.
Multiple.
That's true. You can't push off. Yeah, I guess, but
he was getting injured in the worst place to get injured.
That's true, but I mean, AJ was so talented physically.
Yeah,
this
is sports, though, Dadio. This is sports. I mean, you're talking about a domain of human interest where people get old in their 30s. That's crazy. I mean, if you think about it, sports is a very cruel mistress, and that's the reality.
It's what makes stories like LeBron and I guess Tom Brady, for that example, that much more exemplary. Like if it happens to AJ Green at 32, how has it not happened to some of those rare guys like LeBron, who's just put just so much mileage on his body? Like this happens to everybody. And if there wasn't those incredible examples, then we would look at Green saying, yeah, I guess that makes sense. He's 32. He's had multiple foot injuries. He hasn't played a down in football in a 600-day period. It just might be time.
No, that's true. I guess what I'm saying is I've seen guys lose a step and is still find their place. Maybe AJ can find it.
This looks like more than just a step.
Oh, just a step. That's what I'm saying. Is like he's just I think his body's kind of worn down. Maybe in a few months, maybe next year he finds a way to find his a new identity. Maybe.
Right. But I see the Auden Tate comment as being basically him trying. There's competition now to take over the star power of AJ Green on the team.
Yeah, the offense might be better if Tate takes those snaps, but I think they still value Green for who he was to give him more opportunity to succeed.
And they're trying to use him the way they used to use him. That's what I'm saying. They expect him to be the game-breaking receiver he was, whereas right now it's like, he's not going to, run by or outrun defenders necessarily, but end zone targets, certain things he can find ways to contribute in big ways.
He idolized Larry Fitzgerald so much, and I think that's a natural transition that needs to be made here.
Right.
Yeah.
But someone mentioned about how they're saving AJ. Brian McHugh mentioned, are they saving AJ Green for the Ravens game? And I'm looking forward to the Ravens game because I don't know if we're going to have a chance to do a preview this week, but. John, do you see a disaster unfolding against the Ravens, or do you see with this better performance of the offensive line, is this a trend? Because I know the Jaguars. Look, the Jaguars looked okay the first 2 weeks, and like I said, they kept other running backs in check. The other running backs were running for 3 yards a carry, okay, and we broke out against them. So, do you think we have a chance against the Ravens?
No. I think they have a chance to score points. I don't think they have a chance to slow down that offense, though, unless they borrow the Chiefs' defense. Like that's been the only unit that has been able to contain Lamar Jackson in the most important games in his career. Like you have to score 30 points to keep up with that offense, because with 3 running backs that can get 5 or 7 yards a pop, one of them being Lamar Jackson, this run defense is nowhere near ready to take that on. So they're going to need to score a lot of points, and maybe they can do that because the Ravens pass rush is not that good and their defense is just overall underwhelming, but that offense is tough to keep up with.
It is, and that's the thing. And I'm glad you brought up offense or defense on our side, because I know Daddy was on this dial-up Village Island internet, and I'm watching the clock here and it's running out, and I wanted to point out the defense only allowed 89 rushing yards against the Jags this Sunday.
That's great.
Zach Taylor gave
the. They were a lot of passing yards, but they were playing catch up. Let's be fair.
They were. They were.
Like John pointed out in his article, a lot of them were at the end of the 2 halves.
Right.
So it's kind of the Bengals kind of got sloppy in the first half, but the second half, they had a big lead. So maybe playing it kind of safe. Guys, we're running out of time.
Well, no, I want to say one more thing. Zach Taylor was so impressed with the defense's performance. He gave them the defense the game ball in the locker room, and he called it. He said that was the standard. And I'm wondering, does Mike Brown ask for those balls back later? How does that work?
Well, what's funny. You think about Joe Burrow being the perfect quarterback for the Bengals, and they gave him a game ball, and he put it back with the other balls to be used for next week.
He knows.
And I saw Mike Brown actually. I didn't actually see him, but I know he shed a twinkle in his eye and a little tear gathered in the corner of his eye, because that is how much is a professional football? $100? That's a lot of money. Yeah. And Mike Brown was like, this is the guy. This is the man for our team.
Boy.
He was so happy.
Yeah.
But no, really, John, what I was trying to say earlier about Burrow's accuracy, and I could close with this, is that he doesn't just look like a great rookie. To me, with that accuracy and the plays he's making and the adjustments, all that kind, he's playing at the MVP level. I'm sorry. Yes. I know the team is not winning enough for him to be. He's playing close to the MVP level, John.
Yeah.
I know your eyebrows just went really high.
No,
he's one of the It's close. It's close. He's not close. There yet, but it is close. I think he's PFF's,
it's close. Yeah.
I think he's PFF's 8th ranked quarterback right now, and you're right. Like there are just a handful of plays every single week. Then you're like, there's no way Andy Dalton's making that throw. He's throwing to guys who are not even open, but it's just so pinpoint accurate that they just end up being explosive plays.
I wouldn't even compare him to Andy Dalton. You got to compare him to Peyton Manning. Yeah. I think he is what everybody said Peyton Manning was. He is the real Peyton Manning.
Right. Okay, with that, we got to end the show. But please
Yeah.
don't forget to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and also to subscribe on the YouTube, turn on the notifications, all that kind of stuff. That's it. We'll see you next time. So long, sweetie pies.